many callers don't teach the outskirts of square dancing. They just teach the calls. They don't teach how to behave. They don't teach the manners. They don't teach anything. They don't teach about associations, nothing. And when I talk to them, they all tell me, I don't have time to do that. But it only takes 5 minutes a day, a class night, to teach something about square dancing as the scene of square dancing. And the most important thing is you never know if that student that's listening to you is the next president of your dancers association.
That's true.
You give away the chance to educate him in all about square dance.
I have pamphlets I pass out to my angels about how they're supposed to behave. And I pass out some pamphlet about what the new dancers can expect and get out of the dance and how they conduct themselves, because I think that's very important.
Yeah. One of the interesting conversations that was had prior to this session was along the line of, we spend a lot of time telling dancers what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, what the rules are, what's polite, what's not impolite, what to wear, what not to wear, how deodorant works, and all this other kind of stuff. And there's a big, heavy focus on that. And it is completely and totally the wrong focus of square dancing, in my opinion. It is very important that this stuff does get taught, absolutely. But you can make teaching manners fun. You can make learning how to take a soft hand grip instead of a death grip. You can make it fun. And the way to do that is be willing to make an ass of yourself as a caller, get up on the floor, have the dancers laugh at you when you have this little lady that's 70 years old saying, okay, now I want you to squeeze my hand. And then as a caller, you yell out in pain, drop to the floor as if she's crushed your hand, let her jump back and go, ooh, in surprise, and then get up. And girls, I want you to do that the next time a man crushes your hand in a death grip. I guarantee he won't do it again, and everybody will have a laugh, but the point is made. You can make teaching manners, teaching styling, you can make it fun. If you make it fun, it's fun. You can say, right, next week, I want everybody not to shower before they come out and put on your stinkiest clothes. Everybody put a tuna sandwich under each arm, and we're going to come and we're going to have a smelly dance theme. And that way you'll know why we talk about deodorant.
I don't know if I would really suggest doing that, because I think there might be too many people that would do it.
Yeah, but I think you get the point. You can say something else, and then you'll say, or maybe we could just all have a shower and use deodorant. I don't know. What do you think? And throw it out. And of course, everybody will laugh, but you get the point across. You no longer have to teach anything. You've made the point without making the point. And that's what we need to put back. That used to be, I know, and I came up in the European model. That's where I learned to dance and call. This was, all the ECTA callers would do that. They would get off the stage and then make total and complete fools of themselves, as would the American callers out there, to make the styling, to make all the manners, to make all this kind of stuff fun. And yeah, they had the pamphlets, they had that. And and you grab one of these, if you're interested, grab one of these at the end of the table. And it was in German and it was in English. All these other kinds of things happen. You're right, that is not done anymore. I think your pamphlets are a great idea, Terry.
And I don't pass them out the first night. I mean, yeah. Except to the angels. The angels are the ones I talk to mostly to start with, but I don't pass them out until people start asking me questions about different things. And I go, well, here's a pamphlet that'll tell you about it.
Teresa, did you get that comment on the Callerlab convention? I scrolled through my chat. Somebody was asking, is there a Zoom for the Callerlab convention this year? I think you answered that, but it went through my chat very quickly.
Yeah, and I'll just note, that this is a opportunity to attend, and it's open to everyone. So any caller, dancer, club leader is welcome to attend. It's going to be Saturday, March 27th, and we've got some different things scheduled throughout the day that'll be coming out. A more detailed schedule will be coming out, but it's starting Saturday, March 27th. That's at 12:30 p.m. Central Time. So whatever that conversion is for you. But really, so we've got, a keynote address talking about sociability. We're really excited about some presentations that we've got coming up. You'll get to see what happens at an annual business meeting for Callerlab. You'll get to hear about some of the initiatives that are coming up, some of the changes that are happening. So we're really excited about this first virtual meeting, and we hope that you'll plan to join us. We do ask that you register. That link is in the chat, and it's also available on our website, kind of outlined what the event will be, what time, when, where, how you attend. So
Yeah, and I think I'm going to have to talk to Barry because we have a Zoom meeting scheduled for that day right in the middle of the session. I would like to say we were there first, but I'll talk to Barry.
You were, but you know, that's tough.
I'll talk to
I
Barry
noticed
and
there's
see if
a-
we can reschedule that one in Australia on the 28th of March, the 27th of March for everybody else. I don't think it'll be a problem, but that is, like I said, there's a lot of sessions going on with that at Callerlab. There's a lot of sessions you can tune in. I'm not sure if there's going to be concurrent sessions, but there are breakout rooms for discussions and a lot of discussions like this. You don't have to be a member of Callerlab to attend. You do have to be a member of the committees if you're attending the committee forum sessions, the votes and whatnot. That's a whole separate issue. That's not the Callerlab convention, although some of them will probably get together and talk and hash out those other kind of things.
So
John was asking about the background
raising
noise.
his hand through Glenn is raising his hand through the chat a couple of times here.
I've got windows going in a number of places, which is why I'm saying, Bob, we're getting a fair bit of feedback that comes from you every now and then. It's not constant, it's not there now, but every now and then we do get some feedback from you. So Glenn, you had, sorry, who was raising their hand?
Bob.
Bob, you had a comment, and then somebody else was raising their hand. John was raising his hand. So we'll start with Bob.
Yeah.
My comment was, I see Glenn has got a question twice in the chat.
Question, suggestion.
Yeah, the only reason I put it in the chat twice is because my question kind of converted to a question / suggestion while I was sitting here thinking about it. So is this a good time for that?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to throw it out there. So I'm not a caller. I've called a few times in my dining room. I was working on becoming a caller when COVID hit. So that kind of put me at a halt. My wife and I ran a Plus Club here in Austin. We started a Plus Club and ran it successfully for 3 years. And then we moved on to Advance and turned that club over to a caller. So, and we were dancing 5 and 6 nights a week for a long time there. And I like to talk to callers. I've been talking to callers ever since we started about 5, 6 years ago. My question is, callers seem to already have established their opinions about what's going on amongst the dancers, about basically everything. Callers are very opinionated, which is fine. And Callerlab seems, and believe me, I'm not on the inside there, but Callerlab seems to be an echo chamber for callers. So my question is, what does Callerlab do to get feedback for the callers from the dancers? And the suggestion is, if they're not, maybe they need to form some kind of committee or liaison to go out and survey the dancers and find out what's going on. Because honestly, there are things that I've seen as a dancer that I don't think the callers are seeing. That's my question / comment.
Teresa, Bob?
That's it.
Oh, sure.
yeah, thanks for sharing that, Glenn. And I'm glad you mentioned, I've been jotting down some notes here, so I definitely added that to my notes. Just kind of a comment. So we do have a category of membership, you could say, and it's a subscriber category. So for folks who aren't callers but want to be, receive the direction, receive the newsletters, not necessarily be able to join committees or that kind of thing. But I think that what you bring out about kind of asking for feedback from dancers and maybe in that subscriber category or, through any forum, I think is a good idea. So I'll definitely jot that down. And as far as how that would look, I think that that's a good idea and we can definitely explore that more, but thanks for that suggestion.
There was a discussion many years ago about the committees. I think it was when Hap Pope was on the Plus committee and the mainstream committee back then. There was a comment made at one of the ECTA Callerlab joint things, which said that each of these committees should be an equal number of dancers and callers so that when callers decide on a movement, the dancers can tell them if they're full of crap. I'm paraphrasing, but actually I'm not paraphrasing. That's exactly what was said. It may be technically right, but you're full of crap. But anyway, I think that's an excellent idea, Glenn. John, you had your hand up.
Yeah, couple things. Number one, when you're teaching, I teach them that do not pull, you just touch. If you're doing a right and left through, you touch it, you just tap hands as you go through. You do not pull. Because I was first starting to dance, we were doing their instructions, or not instructions, it was actually about a year later. And they were calling a call and they said, the left swing through. And the guy that came over to me grabbed my arm that had the rotator cuff just repaired 6 weeks before that and yanked the hell out of me. And I told him, next time you pull me, you're going to be on the floor. And he said, what's the matter? I said, when you dance carefully. I said, I just had a rotator cuff done. I said, it was my second time. I don't need a third one. He apologized and and every time I danced with him after that, he was very gentle with it. Whenever he danced, he started touching hands and not pulling. It made it a point to him. Number two, I push out with people that square dancing is using the body, the mind, the coordination, and everything else. And it's a great formative exercise. And I have a class coming up on Zoom from an exercise organization that got in touch with me and said, we'd like you to do a square dance class and see the exercise in it. And I explained to her what was involved with it. And she says, it sounds great. So it's coming up in a couple of weeks. And the third thing is that I have a thing that was given from the Caller School. I got a book called Core 20, the 20 calls. And with those 20 calls, I took them and I put them in a sequence for teaching first nighters and all, and parties. And I have it set up in a sheet that's set up with the call with the definition before it and how it's done, and from one move to the next. And so you have everything going in sequence and they're not there jumping all over the place from this call to that call. And if I have like wheel around, and then I'll do a reverse wheel around. And, and they automatically, they realize they're doing it. The man leads or the lady leads, and it's a difference, and it works pretty good. And with the 20 call list, I can actually in an hour and a half put out 20 calls to them, and they are dancing after that with for the next half hour with whatever I call, and it works great. So it's the Core 20 is really a nice little group of calls. And when they made the calls up in a book, like he has a right-hand star and a left-hand star, and I put in there boys, girls, heads, sides. I teach it every which way possible, real quick, so they know, and they would start realizing that they have to think and pay attention, and they're not talking while they're dancing, and it makes a big difference. So just for a comment, comment in there.
A lot of that goes back to what was being said earlier about if you're going to be doing a lot of these one night stands, you don't need a lot of material. You just have to
No.
know how to use the material that you have, and you need to know how to entertain dancers. Betsy gave an excellent presentation. She's given a number of presentations on that specific topic. I agree with you wholeheartedly, John. David Hill, you had your hand up, and then I've got Guido.
All right, this is for the gentleman that said he talks to a lot of callers in regards to, no, I just lost my train of thought, but as to if a caller does or sees something that they don't like. I can tell you this, I'm 51, though I don't actively call at the moment. I started when I was 13 years old, okay? If I'm in your area, say I'm in Austin, calling at your dance, and I do something or I say something or that maybe you don't know, you don't like, please come up to me and say, hey, I don't like this, or can you expand on this, or can you do this, do that? Because I'm hired to come in and call your dance for you. I'm there to provide entertainment for you. And part of that is if I don't know what the dancers want, I'm going to do what I do. So I guess my comment is, as a caller, if I'm doing something wrong and a dancer feels that I'm doing something wrong or they don't like the way I'm doing something, come up to me and say it. Tell me, because how am I going to learn? If you fire a letter off to Bob and it takes him 3 weeks to respond to me, that's 3 weeks longer that I'm going out and doing things that maybe people don't like. If you tell me directly, then I can fix it sooner. So I guess my point is if you see something or hear something that a caller does, tell them, because I can guarantee you this, 90% of callers out there, probably closer to 99% of callers out there, are very approachable. And you can tell them, because we're here for you.
So if I could jump in and just clarify real quick, I'm not speaking about calling as a particular dance, and I do talk to the callers about what they've done and ask them why they've done it and tell them my reaction to it, but I don't try and tell callers how to call. No, it's more along the lines of where callers are leading Callerlab. I mean, the Callerlab committees are made up of callers. And what I don't think the callers see necessarily is the direction things are having, the programs are having, and I know some of them do, but the impact, the one thing that, let me give just a quick example, which is our split programs, Mainstream Plus. I've seen this. I sat there and watched it over and over again. The first square or the first tip, everybody gets on the floor. We have a great time. It's excellent. We're flying around the floor. Everybody's doing well, and it's great. The second tip, everybody gets up there, and it's great. We're having a good time. The third tip is plus, and the mainstream dancers are sitting there and they're watching the plus dancers and they're doing great. They're doing fantastic. They're having fun. The fourth tip comes, and I watched this happen over and over and over again. And I'm like, why can't I explain this to the callers? And what happens that fourth tip, and it does, you know, it can be a 1-1 or it can be a 1-2-3, doesn't matter. But what happens that fourth tip is the plus dancers are like, I've danced 3 tips. I don't need to dance another mainstream tip. I want to visit with my plus friends. All the plus dancers set out, and the caller who has had his expectations set that, oh, this is a good floor, they can really handle this stuff, calls way over the mainstream dancers' heads because they don't have the plus dancers to help them and keep them moving through and, you know, add that expertise out there. The mainstream dancers break down left, right, all over the place. They're embarrassed. and they're embarrassed in front of an audience because the plus dancers are watching this disaster. And yet, every time I talk to callers about this, they have this preconceived notion that no, that's not happening. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And I'm sorry, I'm getting very excited about this, but it drives me crazy because it's one of the things that has hurt us so bad, because those mainstream dancers during that fourth tip, they're sitting there watching the plus dancers, and the plus dancers are having fun, and they now know that they're the reason they had fun on those first two tips. And they're like, well, hell, I want to be a plus dancer. They're good. And that is what's killing us. We're advertising.
That goes back to what you were saying earlier, Glenn, about this is where callers have to learn the fundamentals of calling. Every tip, you know, your first tip at an evening, you're feeling the floor out, but every tip, you've got to feel the floor out to see what's going on, because every tip can be different. And that's the basic foundation and formation tools of learning to call, which you're absolutely correct, has been lost. We had some of this comments. Bob, I think I jumped in on you there. Bob Riggs.
Yeah, what I would comment on is in a lot of the parts of the country and probably the world, the program of the evening is in caller run clubs. Yes, it's the caller who's defining it. But in club run clubs, most of the time I go in and the program's set by the club. And so I can't go in and say, okay, I have, you know, most of the floor is dancing mainstream, or half the floor is dancing mainstream, or is plus capable. I can't go in and make those decisions because it's not my decision. My contract or what's driving me is coming from the club. My clubs don't have plus tips in the middle of my mainstream dances. Because I don't go for that, but recognize that it's not necessarily the club or the caller that's making that decision. It's the program of whoever's sort of organizing that event. The other aspect, and this comes back to an earlier comment, is the programs drive how organizations market the event. If the dance is marketed as a mainstream dance, they ought to be dancing mainstream. If it's marketed as a mainstream +2, that means it's mainstream with 2 plus tips. If you market it a certain way, then you're driven to deliver that. In the old days when I started, you could basically call a program that matched who showed up for that night and what they desired on that night, not driven by some external force.
I agree, Bob. I mean,
Yeah.
and I totally misconstrued the question, but what Bob says is absolutely spot on. You know, it is whoever is running that dance. So yeah, you're spot on, Bob.
And any caller worth his or her salt will understand that they call to the floor. I've got Guido, and then I've got Bob Elling. Guido, you made a comment in there about Callerlab being an international organization. When are you going to start having meetings internationally that other Callerlab members can attend, or something to that effect?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, you know, up to this point, right, Callerlab as a membership-based organization, you know, we try and serve our members, and we recognize that they are all over. You know, currently the majority of our members are still in the US. And so, you know, when we try and make sure that things are, you know, in a place where the most people can join. But I think that for the future, like, that's definitely something that's on my radar, is what can we be doing? How can we really stretch out and make things accessible for folks, regardless of where they are? I think the upcoming virtual events that are happening, the virtual committee meetings, are important, but, you know, I think that that's definitely something that's on the radar. And if you have ideas on how we can make that happen, I would love to talk about that.
There was the old concept of the mini labs, but they have not been done for quite a while. Terry, thanks for answering the question. Somebody said on the Callerlab application, it asks if you call 12 sessions a year, does that include open dances, party dances, or class and club? Terry said both. I agree with that. At least I hope that's right, because I don't call 12 regular club dances a year, but I do a lot of open dances.
Yeah.
Guido.
12 is going to
sorry.
include any dance sessions. Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Sorry.
Any dance, anytime you're calling. So classes, workshops, all of that are going to count towards your number of dance sessions.
Yeah. So Guido, I hope that answered your question. Bob Elling, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I pretty much agreed with it until 5 years ago. I got hired out in Oakdale and I started calling there, and they had these split level alternating tip dances. My experience was that I had the same number of squares on the floor through the night. You know, if we had 6 squares showed up, 6 squares dance every tip. Now, there weren't that many mainstream dancers there, and as it turned out, I was alarmed that, hey, that's only a couple of couples, you know, but they're doing these alternating tips for them. But the dancers there, the Central Valley, they supported that, and they didn't back off. It's an attitude. And I ended up getting multiple dances and booking a lot of Saturday nights, more than I had ever done in my life, you know, of 40 years of square dancing, because people had fun. If the caller creates fun in the mainstream part, the plus dancers might dance those tips. But if he's not fun, even though he might be funny, but he's not creating that enjoyment, then of course they're going to wait for their plus tips. But if you can give them something new and exciting during the mainstream tip, they'll want to dance it. And I did that for 5 years, and I experienced the height of my career, so to speak, and getting booked by multiple clubs because of it.
Well, that reiterates a comment that I hear quite often. We hear callers and dancers saying, "Oh, come to plus, it's the fun level." Now, to me, I don't know how many of you have heard that, probably maybe only about maybe 9 out of 10 of you. But if you ever hear a dancer saying, "Oh, come to plus, it's the fun level," or, you know, callers saying that, "Oh, can't wait till we get you to plus because you can really have fun there," that's the time that you as a caller need to go up to that other caller and say, "Look, this is happening in your club. If you can't make your basic level fun, your mainstream level fun, and you need to have plus on there and extra movements, and you're not teaching and calling, you're not doing your job, because every level needs to be fun." I had 2 hands go up. John, you had your hand up?
Yes. In regards to that, in the Philadelphia area here, it's all plus clubs. There's no mainstream clubs at all. I've been to dances where a caller would get up there and we'd have some new dancers in, so that he'd be calling the mainstream, but he would be calling every other tip, but when he called the plus tip, he called it as a mainstream clip, and the plus dancers didn't realize they were doing mainstream because of the way he put the calls together.
Hmm.
And it was really a great dance. So, I mean, mainstream is the first thing. And like, excuse me, my voice, with Jerry's story, where he rests in peace, when he says that he wanted to get mainstream going with his 50 calls and such, that was a bit, when I was talking to him, of teaching for 2 years or better of mainstream before showing them anything about the plus call. And you could get them dancing all different ways with that. And like I say, with reverse and forward and everything else, you can make a good dance out of mainstream, and dancers would enjoy it.
There was a caller at a festival. It was one of the caller sessions that was given at the festival earlier in Canada, that had basic through challenge as halls, which was great. It was a great convention. But there was the caller sessions beforehand, and he made a point of pointing out to him. He says he's going to do this in the challenge hall. He's not going to mention this to the dancers, didn't want anybody else to do it, but he called exactly the same tip in the challenge hall and then went to the basic hall and called exactly the same tip. And the basic dancers actually got through it easier. They weren't brand new basic dancers. I'll be lying if he was a good caller, and it didn't matter what hall he'd be calling in there, people would be there. But it was the same material at the basic program that he called at the challenge level. And he said, well, and that's what it's about. Now, that's an unfair assessment because, quite frankly, half that material challenge dancers know what it is, but haven't danced that in years because there's so much else that they would have been dancing. They probably haven't even heard of, reverse wheel around in 40 years or whatever they've been doing. But it just goes to show you the point that any caller, if you do your work, can make any level fun with the material that you have. And as to what you were saying of losing the plus dancers on the floor on that fourth tip, that's part of being a caller, learning how to read a floor, learning how to adapt it, and learning how to make it fun. And you can do that, simple things like Jerry gave a presentation here on reverse symmetry. That simple thing at a basic level changes a whole foundation feel of a floor, and it makes for a wonderful dance that everybody can have fun at. It's a great leveler. Guido, you had your hand up.
Yep. I would like to add something to that. About 3 years ago, we did have an open dance because some callers requested during Edeltraud's Caller School to have a celebration for calling 20 years or so. And the topic of the dance was, it was a mainstream dance, and we, the callers, had the task to call basic, but incorporate a 3/4 tag formation in our tips as the topic. So the main theme for the dance was 3/4 tag formation, using only basic calls. And one dancer came to Edeltraud and said, well, a dance like this helps us to live with a bad club caller for an entire year. And they didn't even notice it was just basic.
Yeah. I remember those in ECTA. We did. It was actually the same kind of thing. How do you set this up? How do you not set this up? I've got Bob Riggs, and then I've got Bob Elling.
So just a comment. At the Callerlab convention, we do have dances, and one of the dances a couple years ago was a basic dance, and I believe Betsy organized it. And all the callers got up, and their job was to call a basic tip. And it was very interesting how much fun we all had doing that. There's various things we've done. We've done all traditional choreography. We've done nights where we have the European or the international callers come in and call. And it's really fascinating to see the American callers trying to dance to European choreography. It isn't always as good as you would hope it would be, because they're not necessarily able to do the things that the basic program or the programs in Europe are dancing, and therefore it's a learning experience for everyone. And I think that's the point. And that's something that happens at our conventions, and they're planned ahead of time. And so as you think about choreography, you think about what you're doing. I am trying to promote various sessions on how to teach callers how to call with the 12 core basics that are in the community dance program, or call with the 20 basics that Glenn mentioned, and learning how to entertain with a subset of calls. It's a skill you have to work at, being able to entertain with any individual subset of the list. And I would encourage everyone, no matter what programs you call for, to periodically drop back and restrict yourself to a certain subset of calls. I think we all get better when we do that.
Absolutely. Bob Elling.
I just realized what was wrong with that other comment. Not that it didn't happen, but on the fourth tip, the plus dancers would sit out. What is wrong with that? It means they started with a plus tip, went to mainstream, started with a plus tip, and meant they should have started with a mainstream tip first, then got the plus.
No, that's not what he said, Bob. He said the first tip was everybody, the second tip was everybody, the third tip was a plus tip, the fourth tip, the plus dancers sat down because they'd already danced 3 tips.
I misunderstood that.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Okay,
I'm going to just right now, I want to, we're now an hour past our hour. Teresa and Bob, don't feel obligated that you need to stay around, because I noticed the conversation is digressing into a lot of different areas. You are more than welcome to stay. If anybody has any questions, comments, queries, or points to Teresa or Bob, by all means make that. To both of you, I want to thank you both very much for coming out, putting your neck on the line, and giving us a few avenues of questions and answering some of the questions, and more importantly, dispelling some of the myths around what Callerlab is and what is not. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing that. I've been trying to get Callerlab up here to actually talk for almost a year now, but I've never really got a response as to what it is. But I think it's because I was approaching committees, because as soon as I mentioned to in one of the sessions, Bob, you started kicking this off and away we went. So I thank you for that especially. Does anybody have any more questions for Bob and Teresa? And then we'll just open it up for general discussion, and everybody is more than welcome to say. Yes, Betsy.
I have one more. Before SSD was developed, there was a program called the Condensed Teaching Order, which is very similar to SSD. And somewhere along the line, SSD has been the favored program as opposed to the Condensed Teaching Order. They're very similar, and I wondered what happened to the Condensed Teaching Order.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the condensed teaching method, right, CTM, is listed on our website. Those materials are out there. I think that, as far as the question of what happened, right, I think that, the SSD, the folks that were advocating for that really took off, requested a committee, kind of developed resources, much like CTM did, right? They had those resources available as well. But in this case, I think that it was the folks that took off with SSD kind of advocating for that. That's not to say that in the future, other programs could also, do the same thing. I think that it's just that the folks that were advocating for SSD really took the step to, request a committee, kind of develop the resources, request a resolution, that kind of thing, if that kind of answers the question. But both programs are still listed, they're listed on the website. Those resources are out there for folks to try.
I have an observation on that.
So let me give you a little history on this. In the Callerlab of 2019, in the mainstream committee, they voted to have an ad hoc committee, and that committee was formed. And that committee's mission was to come up with a limited basic list that could be used in this way. That in July of 2019, there was a meeting of Jerry Story, Bill Harrison, and Harlan, and to look at the 3 different programs and see where we could come together. We did come out with a list, and it was sent back to the mainstream, basic and mainstream committee to address. They ended up tabling it to see what would happen with SSD. There's been discussion in the last couple of weeks about the fact of, well, why didn't we do this? Well, that I don't know where it's going to go from here. There are those who say we should be going down that path. You should note that the list that was came up with CTM, Club 50, and the basic and mainstream list. SSD and CTM are 6 calls different. That's as far as the differences are between those 2 lists. They're very, very similar philosophies, very similar lists in those 2 areas. The teaching order is different. and between those various things. But you should know that it's still out there and it's still a discussion point. And I don't even think it's dead. I think it's potential for a revival, so to speak.
One of the things that seems to be really confusing, and it's confused me too, about those two programs, and the confusion started with the CTM, the condensed teaching method, which I taught a bunch of classes using at the request of the club. The context for they're not just lists, right? Lists are easy to understand, and like you mentioned, these lists are very similar, but the CTM, as I understood it, the idea was that this is a way to bootstrap dancers quickly to get them into your plus club or your mainstream club if you were going whichever of those. And the hard thing to understand about it was what are you supposed to do with it? What do we do when they're done? And my understanding, and somebody can correct me if this is wrong, was that the idea was at the end of CTM, they've been brought up to do a bunch of square dancing that feels like real square dancing, and now we're going to integrate them into the club. The way we're going to do that is we're going to drop the club level down to their level, and then every week when they come to the club dance, we'll have a workshop or something, and we'll bring them up, but we'll be bringing them up in the context of the weekly dance. The SSD program, on the other hand, the answer to the question is what's the level after SSD is nothing. SSD is a standalone thing that says this is what these people this is going to be their concept of square dancing, the be all and end all. They're not going to go on to plus, they're not going to go on to any other thing. This is a program that you can dance, and you say we dance this program, and it's separate from the other programs from mainstream and plus and so forth, which have they have a hierarchy, and you can go through levels, and your club may decide to stop at some particular one or whatever. But there's places to go on. Whereas in SSD, the idea is we're not encouraging them to go on. We're encouraging them to think this is square dancing, and isn't it great? And it is.
Just to clarify one thing, Chris. The perception of the condensed teaching order, as I understood it when it came out, it was essentially there's a number of movements that are there. It was as well a 12-week program the way it was designed, but it took the movements that have higher frequency use and it built the program around them. It wasn't designed as a blast class. It wasn't designed as a new list or a new program. It was a methodology of doing exactly what you said, getting them dancing, having fun, and showing that you could actually have a lot of fun and a lot of work on the floor. And it also brought into fore the secondary option. So we've got a lot of movements out there that don't get used very often. What's the necessity of those movements? That's where it came. But as you said, it's not what its design was. It was more of the implementation of it, because at the time of the condensed teaching method, we also had the Club 50, the 12-week, the 12-step, the 1,500, 1,000, 1,733 other dance variations of programs that every caller would have at least six versions of, that only changed on days that ended with the letter Y. Betsy, I believe you've been using the condensed teaching method now for years, very, very successfully. That doesn't preclude her teaching the rest of it, but what it does mean is that she gets her dancers up there having fun and entertaining. But I also know Betsy is, she's been calling for at least 2 years now and is a very capable entertainer. That being said, Teresa, I believe you posted a couple links. I've also posted the link, but I've also posted the actual documents for both the condensed teaching order, or the condensed teaching method, and the SSD. And if you go through them and look at them, they both describe what their entire outlay of those programs is designed for. They both give choreographic material for the use of those programs, and they also give an explanation of what the program is designed for. Unfortunately, like our current Callerlab definitions and everything else, they have 6 or 8 pages at the beginning and explanations at the end that are very important to read to understand what it's about, but very few callers today actually read them. They skip to dance action only and then wonder why, spin the top isn't on the SSD list, or why Dixie style isn't on the condensed teaching order list. Read the whole document. I cannot stress that enough. Excellent comment, Chris. Does anybody else have any questions or queries for Teresa or Bob? Yes, John.
Yeah, the thing is that what they say is that if you have the SSD classes, you really can't go dance to a club dance because of the calling all the different mainstream calls that aren't on the SSD list. So you're really involved in only your own little group for your regular dances. So it's like I said, what I had with the Core 20 is I had the calls set up with the Core 20, and then the rest of the calls, and I started adding the other calls in from the Callerlab list as the time went on. And by the time they get done in 2 years, they know the calls all the way around. And it really worked great. And you know, it's, if you go to a plus dance, they break down a lot. Mainstreams, when they know the calls, they dance right on through. It's a lot better dancing. So I think we somehow, maybe with Callerlab, we should maybe push getting some more mainstream clubs started out here in the Philadelphia and such areas, Jersey and all that, because everything's in plus. I don't think we have a plus mainstream club within the 50-mile radius of here. So, thank you.
If I could jump in here, the starting of clubs is not a function of Callerlab. The starting of clubs is a function of callers and/or dancers. Right. And I think one of the things, and I've been talking to all of the people in my sphere of influence, is callers, you need to start clubs. You need to start clubs of dancers. And if they only dance SSD, so be it. Remember, this is a social activity, and those people who are participating are the ones that need to be having fun and being social interaction with each other. If we get enough SSD clubs in a given area, then they can travel to other clubs. If not, enjoy the people you're dancing with. There's been a big concern about, well, we don't have state conventions that have an SSD hall. Well, if you get enough clubs and enough dancers, guess what? That'll happen. It's not a matter of the fact that we can't do this. The matter is we can do this as callers. We can take the leadership role and create these kinds of events. I've got 2 clubs. Now, Colorado's a little different. We've been a heavy mainstream area for decades, and there are major callers in the Rocky Mountain region that are converting their clubs to SSD from mainstream, not just to get us all back dancing after the pandemic, but as an entertaining program for dancers. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to have plus clubs. It doesn't mean we're not going to have other things, but our clubs are going to be predominantly SSD, and we're going to learn how to call and have fun with those people and keep them. And we're going to realize that the flow of dancers of a person from a non-dancer through their dancing life averages 3 years. So we need to bring a flow of people in to the activity, let them dance a while. And if there are a few in that group that want to do more than SSD, provide them opportunities to do it in another forum.
Yep.
I agree.
I would like to point out one thing that you said there, John. It was a comment that came up, and it was when I had Jerry here to talk about the SSD program, what it was about. There was things, and one of the comments that was made earlier, the big question, why isn't spin the top on the SSD list? It says, well, basically because somebody had to make a decision when they were developing it. It was not overly used in his area, so that was the list. It wasn't a final, but somebody had to make a decision at one point, and that was just one of the calls that was dropped. One of the things that happened was following those sessions, we had a few callers look and follow a lot of these YouTube videos and conventions. And if they went to square dances after the list, right out. And there was spin the top, spin chain through, spin the top, spin chain. I think there was 4 movements that were called through an entire convention and at several of these dances that were not on the SSD list. And they were not called that often. I think the most frequent one was there was 8 spin chain throughs in a dance and 6 spin the tops in a dance. Everything else was on the SSD list. It was essentially an SSD. Now, granted, that being said, those were all dances that were either on YouTube or were done in the States. And that's where it was called at. Depending on where you go, you'll have different callers do different programs. That was one of the big arguments about, well, why do we need another list? Why do we need a 50 movement program? We have a perfectly good 50 movement program, which is called Basic. Learn how to call people. And there's all these discussions that went around. SSD is a standalone program. It's not a kickstart. It's not a boost. It's not a let's refresh square dancing. It is, think of it as contra, think of it as line dancing, think of it as Scottish Satish or Highland dancing. It's a standalone program. It uses a lot of the same movements, but so does Highland dancing, and so does contra, and so does, everything else. Once you get that concept in, it is a great program. My personal opinion, I think it's too much too fast, but that's just my personal opinion. And we know everybody has an opinion and what they're worth. But unless you're actually involved in this other kind of concept of what is Callerlab doing? Why are these people dictating what we can and can't do? They're not. Trying to put out a set of guidelines for everybody to follow so that Guido can come to Australia and call a dance, and he knows that if it says mainstream, he knows what mainstream. If Hannah is coming here and she's going to call an SSD dance, I can give her the SSD list, or she'll already have the SSD list, and she'll know what she can and can't call. That's what it's for. How you use the material is up to you, and that's what Callerlab is. And the best way to have a voice is to get involved. Jeff, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. One thing I disagree with is the time limit. Now, you can't teach those in 12 weeks. And I think it's got to be set for your dancers. Some people can't come every week. Some are sick. And you've got to revise every week what you did the week before. And the time limit, to me, there are some callers that believe, we should do it in 12 weeks. We just can't. It doesn't work out that way. And I think you've got to be fair on the dancers and give them the opportunity to get through that list, whatever list it is.
I had that same query, Jeff. There was, I think there was 6 callers that were in the discussion. It was actually here on one of these sessions, so we could probably find if we went back to the recordings. 2 of the callers do it in about 24 weeks instead of 12. One does it in 16 weeks, and everybody else was able to do it in 12 weeks, but they all qualified that they get through. It's very standard, very easy application. That's getting them dancing on the floor, and then progressing through the list with the more extended applications, which are still SSD. Progressing through that is the fun that they have learning to dance. And it's very much the same as what we have on the current square dance programs, basic and mainstream. I remember the argument, and it was a very volatile argument, that Callerlab come up with this concept that you could teach the basic and the mainstream program, oh my God, in 48 weeks of 2.5 hours of teaching over a 48-week period. You could do this entire program in a year. Oh no, that's way too fast. You cannot do it. Now we've got basic through plus in parts of the States. That is, well, as somebody said here earlier, we have no mainstream clubs. We have plus groups. So our entry level is plus. We get them dancing, and they're dancing in the plus club within 12 weeks. And then we just teach them the rest as we go along. Different strokes, different areas, different effects. The people that have been using SSD have been doing it effectively. Some of them in 12 weeks. Others modify. Some of it do the SSD program in about 20 weeks. And then they just add on all that. A lot of it, as you say, has to do with the capability of your dancers, the dedication, how good you are as a teacher and a caller putting it together. And I think a lot of it, the ones that have success, like Jerry's been, or has been, was using this very successfully. But the reason is he made it fun and they wanted to come, they wanted to learn. The SSD program is not for everybody. And I can tell you right now, I stick to my guns. It was written not for dancers. It was written for to be danceable by dancers, but it was written for callers to make it easier on callers to get dancers on the floor and put some entertainment back into the dance. That's what the SSD program is written for. It's a callers program much more than it's a dancers program because it's a lot easier to call. Yes, Bob.
I was going to say right on until you got to that last part.
Well, that's a discussion I had with Jerry, and he actually agreed with me.
You know, I first of all, I want to say that the recommendation, the 12 weeks, 12 to 14 weeks, is something that's been debatable since the beginning. And certainly it comes down to the characteristics that you described, dancer ability, attendance, caller's ability to teach. And we've talked about it to people who are excellent teachers, and they say, yeah, I can do it easily in 12 to 14. But I know that if you are a newer caller, if you are not an established teacher, or if you're not a natural teacher, you're not going to be able to teach it that rapidly. But the key is to have fun while you teach, and teach however long it takes to get your dancers successful at the end. Because if you don't teach them well, they won't stick around, and they won't be there for the right reasons. So now, I don't know about this design for callers versus dancers. I do know that, and I'm a little bit, I may say this a little differently. I've used the SSD/Club 50 list for more than 5 years. I've been teaching in my teaching order, which is similar to CTM, that whole time. So I'm not using the SSD teaching order, I'm using the CTM teaching order, because I believe it brings dancers to the floor and provides flow and allows me to teach timing and flow much earlier because of the order of the teaching. But that's a teaching order versus a list inclusion. And there's some very distinct differences between those two. So not for now.
Yeah. Now, when I say it's not a dancer's list, it is a very danceable program, and dancers can dance to it very, very well. I'm not saying it's not a list for dancers. That it is, in that it has a very danceable program and a very effective program. The essence of the list, though, I will put this forward, the basic program is a very danceable program by dancers. The mainstream program is a very danceable program for dancers. All of them are danceable programs, and they're designed for dancers to have fun with. The advantage that the SSD list has over those programs is it simplifies the ability to call without having to know all of the ins and outs and all of the details as a caller. You still have to know how to call. You still have to know how to entertain, but it makes it a lot easier. Where this comes out is the conversation that we actually had here was, it's great when you see callers that call basic and mainstream, but when you take a movement away from them, it suddenly becomes very, very hard. If you have a list that they can do all standard application stuff and then expand a little that they build on, it becomes much easier because that list has all of the common stuff. And this goes back to what Betsy was saying earlier with the CTP, was it's the most common calls that are used regularly and that are featured from standard applications to make it easier to dance, but also easier for callers to call. And that's what I'm saying. It's more of a good tool for callers than it is for dancers. I'm not saying it's not a danceable list. It is. They all are. But the onus of responsibility is on the callers to make it work, no matter which list you use.
John.
John?
Yeah. what I've noticed with our club is it's a plus club. And we tried to get it, which we finally succeeded after 3 years of getting it into a bit of doing every other tip, mainstream and plus, to get the new dancers so they could dance. Because we used to have the classes and then they had no place to go because every place they went was plus. So they finally went to it, but the plus dancers were really at the bit were saying, oh, why do we need mainstream? But who was breaking down were the ones that were doing the plus dances because they didn't, each call wasn't given to them. They had to think 2 or 3 calls together to make that one call up, like you do in challenge and advance. You put a couple calls together and you got a new name for it. And in mainstream, it's just everything's explained as you're going. And the same thing with the SSD and which the CTM is the first time I heard of it. I'm gonna look into that. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, if there are no more questions for me, I'm going to bow out. I'm sitting in a trailer park as well in Albuquerque, New Mexico, on my way back from Yuma, Arizona to Denver. So a little bit of network issues here as well. But I want to thank you all for listening, and if you have questions that I can answer, you can get my email and contact me. I'd be happy to answer anything.
Well, I thank you very much for coming in, Bob. Much, much appreciated. For those of you still with us, we have Ken Ratuzzi coming up next week to talk about those teachable and unteachable moments that every caller has on the dance floor and how to get past that problem. We've all had them. We will all continue to have them at one time. I can see John nodding. Yeah. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you that are members of the Basic and Mainstream Committee, the meeting for that is tomorrow. For me in Sydney, Australia, that's at 5 a.m. I believe it starts. But do check your calendar. That Basic and Mainstream Committee meeting is tomorrow. So tune into that. And the Callerlab convention, everybody is welcome for that, but it is a registration for. That's coming up on the 27th of March in the US, 28th of March in Australia, and whatever date your own particular time zone is. That's going to start, I believe, fairly early, around noonish. It's about a 6-hour meeting with a number of breakout rooms and a number of topics. So mark that date on your calendar. It's either a Saturday or a Sunday, depending where you are. On that day, I'll have a chat with Barry. We may not have a Zoom session for that day, and probably not the week before, because I think that's my daughter's wedding, and my wife would get very upset if I came to a Zoom meeting rather than attending my daughter's wedding. I offered to do them both at the same venue, but she said adamantly no.
Family first.
Teresa, Bob, thank you very much. Mark, you have a question?
I just got a quick question for either Teresa or Bob.
It'll be Teresa because Bob's gone now.
Oh, okay. Do you know anything about the new callers committee?
I do.
I guess, somebody sent me, I can't remember who sent me an invite to be on the committee or something, which I have no idea what it is.
Good question. So this is actually a new committee that the executive committee developed. And I'll just kind of give you a quick overview. There is a committee brief that they're working on just to kind of let people know what they're doing. The comments that we get is that newer callers specifically, whether, and new being a self-identified new, right? So decide, am I a new caller or not? But really that they may not know about some of the resources, some of the how to get involved in Callerlab, some of the things we talked about, but really as a way to help newer callers get involved, to get engaged with Callerlab. So what that committee is doing is drafting either resources, providing a forum for new callers to network, to get to know each other, to find out where resources are. It's currently being chaired by Vernon Jones, and the vice chair is Denise Carbonell. So this is it's a great way just to kind of get your foot in the door if you've not maybe joined a committee before, to see how that structure works. Or if you're already on a committee and you're interested in just networking with other newer callers to share ideas, to share resources, that's a good forum to do that as well. If you're interested in joining, the only requirement is that you be a member of Callerlab and self-identify as a newer caller.
Okay.
I'm newish. Does that count?
Hey, you know what? That's the executive committee talked a lot about that. And I think it's interesting, right? They didn't define, what a newer caller is, but I think that that's fair, right? Because we all kind of start our calling journey at different ways. When I started calling, I was in school. And so that definitely impacted how quickly I learned to call. How frequently I'm calling is going to depend on how quickly I move from being an experienced caller. So self-identified.
Yeah, what is a new caller is always one of those questions that comes up, because there's a definite distinction between how long have you been calling and how much have you called. We have a couple callers here. The one caller, excellent mind, excellent calling, and he's always treated as a new caller because he's only been calling for about, I think, 5 years now. Now he calls basic through challenge, or I think he does call challenge. Yes, he does. And he only calls 5 days a week, some of those days 2 or 3 times a day, but he's still a new caller. Considered by some. And then we also have callers that have been calling now for longer than I have, which is just around the 40 years now. Oh my God. That call once a year. They'll get up and do a tip at a dance, but they've paid their dues to their local callers association and they're classed as callers. So new is a relative term. I don't believe it is based on how long, but it's based on how you self-identify yourself. And that's the specific reason for that terminology.
Yeah, so if you're interested, Mark, I can definitely get you added to the committee. Just let me know.
Denise comes in here every now and then. I haven't seen Vernon, but Denise has no problem, but you can look her up. Just send her an email. Her email address is on the CedarNet website, or if you don't have it, I can always send that to you. But she's always well responsive. Yes, John.
Yeah, there's one thing that just to mention. When I was up in Alaska, which was, I guess, almost 20 years ago, up there they had a square dance hall that was open 24 hours a day. And what it was the different callers came to that club, and whoever wanted to dance went and paid a fee, which is what we did. We just paid it was a $3 fee or something at the time. Went in, you danced as long as you wanted, and you left. And they would every hour, every 2 hours, there was a new caller coming in, and it was a bit of getting everybody in the area into a central area to dance. So they had a nice group really working, which isn't a bad idea for areas where there's a lot of you can't get where a lot of clubs are small. If they can get together all into one big organization, and maybe make that work with the different callers.
I would like to clarify, John. Was that the one in Nome?
It was up in Fairmount.
Fairbanks?
Excuse me?
Fairbanks?
Fairbanks, yes.
Fairbanks. Yeah. They weren't open 24 hours a day. They opened up at sunup and they closed at sundown.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, sunup and sundown was 6 months long.
Sometimes it's short. I was up there in August, so I had 24 hours a day of sunlight.
Yeah. Actually, there's a few places that do that. There was a square dance hall. I can't remember. I think it was in Upper State New York that they actually had a hall. They had something similar to that. They'd open it up for weekends, and it was all the local callers could go there, and anybody could come and dance at any time during that. You just put your donation at the door, stay as long as you want. Their only qualifier was, unless you were just going out for lunch and coming back. But if you're coming in and then coming back the next day, you'd pay twice, and most dancers are pretty good about that anyway.
Yeah.
But it was something like that to give the new callers the ability to get up and actually practice their craft, work with other callers. They could get up and call, they could do all of that. And the dancers locally were very, very supportive of that.
Yes. Yes.
Bob, did you have your hand up or were you just waving? Bob Fur. Did you have something to say? No? Teresa.
Yes, I did want to just thank you. I do have to pop out here, but I want to thank you for the invitation to come. And thanks to all of you for popping on. If there's anything that I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to give me a call or send me an email. If you have ideas, I love to hear those. I'm still, like I said, still learning and still new. And so this is a really exciting time for the activity where we are looking forward to the future and looking forward to some new things. So thanks for all of your work. Thanks for your professional development, hosting this session. This is great. And I look forward to hopefully meeting you all in person sometime soon.
You're welcome back anytime. Nice. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
I'll probably call you Monday.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good.
Thanks a lot, Teresa. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hello, Daryl. I noticed you just came in there.
Yes, I had the wife out getting her first of 2 vaccine shots.
How's she doing?
She's doing fine. How are you doing, Yvonne? She doesn't talk a lot these days. But
well, she's only got you to talk to. I can't say as I blame her.
Well, yeah, just keep it up, Mel. I used to call you my friend, you know.
Oh, I'm always your friend. That's the only reason I can get away with a comment like that.
You're right there. No, she's doing all right. How did it go today? I'm sorry I missed out.
It was good. Like I said, Teresa and Bob had to put on the armor. There was a few comments in there which were rather pointed as to what Callerlab does or doesn't do, but I think the essence of was dispelling the myth conceptions and the misperceptions about what Callerlab is, what Callerlab does. I think it was a great session. It was quite active in discussion. I filled up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of notes here with questions. So it was good and it was interactive. And it brought to the fore a couple of things. There was a few really good suggestions, such as canvassing dancers for what their opinions are on all these lists and changes and decisions, as opposed to canvassing callers, because callers, we all know, have our own opinions. Sometimes, well, what is it that they say? If you put 2 callers in a room and ask a question, you get 7 opinions and they'll all be different.
It's a very interesting time right now because of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots and lots of good ideas coming up and a lot of very interesting discussion going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it's going to turn out. I really don't.
I don't know, but like I said, what I'm trying to do here as a venue is open up to the caller toolbox, and that's the complete caller toolbox, not just modules and choreography and resolution, but also programming, also performance, also perception, how to read a floor, all of those other aspects, which we've been doing for, well, just over a year here, 2.5 years all up with new callers and now everybody. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. Bob Elling was here. Are you still here with us, Bob? No, I think Bob's gone.
I scared him away.
Yeah, Bob gave a great presentation on choreographic management, which was somewhat contradictory to a presentation on choreographic management, not contradictory, but a different approach and a different way of looking at it, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, because a few of the newer callers said, I understood it when he said it, but I didn't understand it when he said it. And this is the essence of learning to call, is finding what is right for you, what works for you, and using that as your foundation and building on it to build the rest. And I think you've promoted that a lot in the past as well, Daryl. There is no right or wrong system. The one that works for you, basic, is the one to start with. And we all use the same foundations. Everything is modules. Everything is, the grid, how you may move in, across, or around the grid. But it's all the same principle, just coming at it from a different angle. And that's what's important.
It always amazes me how difficult we can make it in our own minds, when it is so simple. You can't go much of any place in a square, period. You got lines, you got grids, And ocean waves, parallel waves being the same as grids. What else is there?
Well, what is it? It's somebody did the math on that. If you have a full grid with phantoms, you've got, what is it, 361 million different possible places that any dancer could be at any one time. Some kind of stupid math like that. And that's individual dancers moving individually. And I was wondering about that, and I said, well, why the hell would somebody actually figure that out? And the reason they figured that out is they said, okay, now let's start looking at the mirror aspect. Well, we've now cut that in half. Now let's start looking at formations. Now we've cut it in half again. Now we've cut it in half again. Now we've cut it in half again. And it goes down to the reality of there's really only 64 places out of those 300 million that you could actually be on the floor at any one time. And of those 64 places, you can cut that in half because of symmetry in a square. So now we're into 32 places. That's it. And that whole there, that's all you can move down. I'm not exactly sure what the math numbers are, but it is written out there. I know we've published that in Behind the Mic, and it's up on a couple of other sites on Square Dance Math, but it's a really interesting study because sometimes you need to look at this massive, overwhelming picture and then whittle it down to realize just how easy it is and how complex we're making it.
Yes, definitely. We go out of our way to make it hard.
That's why I have my background the way it is.
Yeah, right. No, it is simple. You know, the point of it is, other than circle figures, other than circle, you know, men star right, circle left, blah, 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 element, DARS, all those are all circle figures. Somebody answered that, please.
All right, I put her on mute.
Other than that, you only have 2 element lefts.
Mm-hmm.
2. That's it.
Yeah.
One of them is a corner box. The other one is in a trade by formation. That's it. 2. Tell me another one.
The formations or where it gets called from?
Now, where they do it. You can call an element
lines
left
facing out.
in lines, but if the lines are facing in, that's the same as a circle figure.
That's correct.
If the lines are facing out, they immediately turn to face their corner, in which case they're back in that corner box.
Yeah, it's not until you get into the quarter tags or those kinds of things where you have one group start an element left, and that's variations that that's just gimmicky.
Yeah, you can come up with things that are not exactly symmetrical and get an element left, but for 99 and 100% of what you're going to call, it's going to be a trade by formation, heads lead right, veer left, bend the line, star through, pass through, element left. Am I right? Trade by formation. That's one of them. The other heads pair off or touch quarter and boys run. You got your corner box, element left.
Yep.
And that's just the basis of it. So, why make it any harder than that? It doesn't make any sense. It's simple.
Yeah.
All we do is
And you know what the sad part is though, when it's explained like that, everybody understands it, everybody sees it, everybody realizes it, but the hardest part is finding it. It's the same concept of if you pair up one couple in a square, you've already resolved just over 70, you've got a 75% chance, or sorry, no, 66.6 or something like that percentage of having that square already perfectly resolved. Just by pairing up one key couple because of the symmetry, there's half the square, it's 50% is already resolved. And if you look at that, no matter what you do, you're going to have one of those corner couples there or not. So you're now at 66. And if they're not paired, hey, you've increased it as well. So you've got a very minuscule chance of not resolving that square to the corner just by pairing up one couple. The reality is, however, even though the math is correct, it never seems to work out that way.
I think it does. I think it does. Like I say, you know, you look at it from a dancer's standpoint, they all think that you have a computer for a brain to begin with. We know that that isn't the case. It's just a matter of learning a few simple rules and applying them. And like you say, there's different ways of managing that choreography. You've got mental image, which is a system of setting up for a particular one of those 2 element lefts.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got memory, which I don't even count that, because there you have, that's like reciting a poem or doing a singing call figure. It never changes. You have control because it never changes. The other's modules, and everybody uses modules, but the way that they use them as a system of management is to work within that grid and know whether it's going to be either the trade by or the corner box.
Yep.
Formations. That's it. Yeah, it's simple. It's simple. We make it hard.
Absolutely.
Site resolution. You said you get one couple paired. If anybody's got their corner in that foursome, everybody does.
Yep.
So that's all you have to look for.
I know. That's what I was saying about site calling. It's one of those things that the concept is there, the rule is there, the math is there, everything supports it, but it never seems to be able to work out that way, especially as a new caller, because you're always frustrated. Where the hell did that corner go?
Yeah,
I did a school one time, and the whole premise of it was to try and get them as far away from the corner as possible, and they couldn't do it. But when they tried to find the corner, they couldn't find it either. So
understanding it and being able to do it are two totally different things. And most of the things that make it possible for any of us to be able to do it is modules. Now, I don't care if they're zeros or equivalents. What I prefer to think of them as flow modules. So if you can dance the dancers and put them where you want them, the rest of it's duck soup.
Absolutely.
I go back to saying it's two couples. Everything's two couple stuff. You look at two couples on either side of the square, and you ought to be able to figure out pretty easily, like you say, paired or not paired, what you have. And the easiest way to learn that two couple is call the two couples. That means Sicilian circle in your classes. They go slow enough, and you have time enough to look out there and see what you've got and how to manage what you have with two couples. If you can't call the two couples, you can't call the four couples. That's what it boils down to. I'll shut up. I didn't mean to jump in and take over your whole conversation.
No,
we missed everybody.
It's open discussion.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if anybody has anything they wanted to discuss. The floor is open, or if there any choreography you wanted to look at, or any exercises you wanted to look at.
I've got one thing. If I have a question, do any of you have an SSD group?
Not that I know
I
of
do.
here. Sorry, Mike, you're still here, aren't you? You have a group, don't you?
Yes, but it just ended. It was a snowbird group. I had one couple, and I had 3 angel couples, a single square. I used the SSD list, but it ended on Wednesday. They're traveling back to Massachusetts, where they live.
Okay, what I'm wondering, and maybe somebody has the answer, even though they might not have a group. I'm talking about SSD dances, not classes, but the actual dance. Did they do rounds at those dances?
Yes.
Yes.
We do.
How many?
We do a hash call, a singing call, and then there's two round dances, and then back to the caller again.
2 by 2.
A two
Yeah,
for two
just two
format.
sets of rounds.
And how's that working for you?
What it does is it gives the people that are dancing in the squares a chance to sit down and relax a little bit. And then you have a better floor coming back onto the floor to do the squares. And a lot of them do the round dancing and the squares, and they just keep going all night.
Yeah.
That's actually my favorite format. I'm probably in the minority. I'm a personal believer that round dancing and square dancing do belong together.
We have one.
That you have, and depending on where I've called, like some of the clubs, they have round dancers and square dancers. So what they did was before the dance, they'd have a pre-round, and then you'd have one round between tips, allowing for a minute on each side for the break. Other places, you'd have a 2 for 2 format if you didn't have a pre-round dance party. And then a couple of dances I've done here in Australia, they'll have, I think, 2 rounds throughout the evening, just like you're calling all squares, but you've got 2 round dances, 2 sets of 2 rounds in an entire evening or in an entire afternoon or something like that, where you've got that. I personally like rounds in there. I don't cue rounds, unfortunately, but I like the constant program, and I found that dancers fully enjoy it. And I've had the same experience with
the
you,
dancers.
John.
The dancers we have.
Yeah.
We have 2 by 2 rounds. I cue rounds. I teach people how. I should say I teach square dance callers how to cue rounds. It's a piece of cake. But SSD is trying to find a way to put social interaction back into the activity. And if you've got a 2 by 2 program without any breaks in it, just go, 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 go. That's what we have now. Yep. And there's no time for visiting. Visiting creates noise, especially if it's happy visiting. And there's nothing that upsets me more than to have a cuer get up there the minute you lay your microphone down and tell everybody to be quiet so his dancers can hear the rounds. You ever heard that?
Yep.
Yeah, not a good thing. That's just taking social clear out of it.
Cece just made the comment that her club takes a snack break in the middle of the dance for visiting, which a lot of them do. My only issue with rounds at an SSD program, on an SSD club when you're doing the teaching, I don't see the ability of also teaching rounds and staying within that program format. Now, that being said, it is a restricted format. It can always be extended out. But in an SSD dance, I think they would belong there, because once a club is established, or once a dance event is established, I wouldn't see what the heck a problem would be of doing a 2 for 2 or even a 1 round in between and having a pre-party or something like that. I think it'd be a great idea.
Yeah.
John, and then Yolanda.
Okay.
Yeah, we have one,
and then Mark.
One club. I have a new partner. She needs, her husband can't dance, and my wife doesn't dance. So I always have, new partners, and we go for round, teaching her round dancing. She's been square dancing for quite a while. I've been dancing with her off. And the club where we go to before the virus hit, we had a hall for the round dance instructions. They have a hall for the square dance, and they had a hall for line dancing. They're teaching line dancing. You start using line dancing in between with the rounds, mixing them in as they were dancing. So to try and get more people involved into the group.
I've always found it interesting that square dancers will have round dancers between tips, but I have seen 2 clubs that have done this, but round dance clubs very rarely have square dancing between tips. Yolanda.
Yes. We also need to keep into consideration that there are spouses that one prefers the square dancing more than the rounds. I know of several, and they compromise by going somewhere where they have rounds as well as squares, because I know several of the spouses, if it was squares only, one of them wouldn't be going, right? I mean, they're much more inclined to round dance. So if you take that round dance out of the configuration, then you may end up losing some square dancers because now you've just taken that carrot away.
Mark.
Around here in Southern California, every club I've been to around here, it's rounds. It's what do you call it? The 2x2 format. But they also do the pre-rounds. Usually for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours before the square dance starts.
Right. Yeah.
And I've always wondered about that. You know, it's called a square dance, but the majority of the time is for the round dancers.
Yeah, I've always gone, if I'm going to have squares and rounds, and this is one of the things that I've stressed with the clubs that I've worked for, if I have squares and rounds, I do one level of squares only. I don't do star tips or whatnot, or yes, I'm better than you tips is what I call them. If there's a pre-round, it's one round between tips. If there is no pre-round, then it's a 2x2 format if they're going to have rounds. I don't think that, you know, you should have an extra hour of round dancing and then have the same thing for square dancing. I'm a strong proponent, but I would look at that and just say, right, well, if we're going to do that, if we're going to have an hour of pre-rounds, I want a tip, or I want a singing call or something between each round dance tip. You know, that doesn't happen. One of the reasons, it was one of the topics that came up earlier today, which was, you know, mixed dances. I strongly hate them with a passion. I call them because that's what I'm hired to call. I hate them, especially if it's alternating tips. And then one of the ones that I think the worst dance, I mean, there's a great atmosphere and everybody danced at the mainstream level, but was mainstream plus A1 star tip, mainstream plus A1 star trip, mainstream plus everybody. That was the format for the evening. And when I looked at that and I went, okay, so your mainstream dancers are there for the entire evening. They get 4 tips. Your plus dancers get 6 tips. Your A1 dancers get 8 tips.
Right.
And yet you're all paying exactly the same price. To me, is that fair? No, that's not fair. That's my opinion. I've called them because that's what I was hired to call by the club, but I don't like them. But I do believe that rounds should be between. That's just me. John, you had a comment, and John Casey, and then John Anthony.
What we have with the
John Anthony, then John Casey.
Yeah, Big John. What they have in our club is a half hour before the dance starts, the cuer comes in and does phase 5 and 6 dances for round dancings. So then they get maybe 6 couples in there that do the round dancing for the half hour. And that way they have their upper stuff, and then during the dance, it's only up to phase 3, sometimes a phase 4, round dance.
I've heard it referred to as square dance level rounds.
Yeah.
John Casey.
Really.
Yeah, Mel, there's an upcoming round dance festival. It's a Saturday, Sunday event coming up in Adelaide. And Les has already sent out invitations to callers to come along and dancers to come to the square dance sessions, 2 hours on Saturday and 2 hours on Sunday for a reduced fee. And I can remember when I was back in Queensland, this is going back 10, 15 years ago, the clogging conventions always had Saturday night square dancing as well.
That's good. That's the first place I've actually ever heard that at a round dance festival. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but that's actually the first one I've heard where you have a round dance festival that they've got squares programmed in between the rounds.
I think we sort of brought quite a bit of pressure on the round dancing society here in in South Australia. For the last 3 conventions that I've been involved in, we did give the round dancers a lot more round dancing than they ever had at any previous state convention. And in doing so, you know, I think now finally the Round Dance Society has conceded that maybe we better put something on for the square dancers, seeing as they are conceding to us so much.
Well, I remember when I came down to call at the Adelaide Convention, there was the afternoon session, which is because we only had the one hall. So that was scheduled in there. The round dance, we had it was a 3-hour caller session in there. They had a full 3 hours in the hall. And then the evening tip, they had a pre-round dance party. And then it was 1 round between tips. And man, the comments on that were so positive. It was like, wow, you know, it's nice to be able to do this. It's nice to be able to do that. The round dance party, 3 hours at a square dance convention. I think the only complaint was, I can't remember her name right now, but she's the round dance cure, but she wanted to attend the callers meeting. So she kept coming back and forth between the two. I can't remember her name right now. Oh, that is so embarrassing.
Probably Thelma, I think. And also,
Thelma, yes.
Yep. And Les also, he cues rounds and he is a caller as well. So, but I mean, you know, you can't, you never please everybody, eh?
Well, it was a great convention. I know we got a lot of positive comments on it. Daryl.
Yes. I remember before round dance cures in our area. And back then, the caller taught round of the month. And everybody in the area did the same round dance, taught the same round dance, taught it to where the dancers could do it from memory, put the record needle on the record, walk off the stage. Back then, there was no problem with cueing. The dancers hearing the cues, they didn't need them. All they needed was the music, which made it quite simple. Now, people might think that I don't like rounds. I do. I write rounds, I cue rounds. And definitely, round dancing is a part of the square dance activity. We have cuers these days. That's fine. That's not a problem. But the question was on the SSD, the Social Square Dance Program. I just wonder how rounds are going to fit in there. Now, Mike, I suspect that what you had was an SSD class down in the Snowbird area, which would take about 12 weeks anyway. That's about what you have left. But yes, that's not really a dance as such. It's a class. Right. But what I'd like to see personally with this SSD is to slam that basic and mainstream programs together, adjust the movements any way they want, move in any extended applications on into the Plus program, and have an entry level that seems realistic, that can be taught in a short period of time, and cut the round dancing down to 1 round dance between tips. The 2x2 program. Now, if you were up there and you did your pattern, you did your singing call, and you had a 3 or 4 minute break where those people have a chance to stand there in their square that they just finished and visit with the people they just had a good time with. And then you put the round dance music on and they'll clear the floor. But they've had a chance to be social, which is what SSD is supposed to do, isn't it? Right now, if you don't go for the dance, you don't go for anything, or you don't go. Because there is no time to socialize until after the dance. If they have a break, or like Cece said, a break in the middle of the dance, that's for social. But I don't know. I think there's a better program than that. Personally.
I like the comment Mark just put up there. It says he likes having the rounds because it's very hot there, and rounds give them a time to cool off. Otherwise, they sweat too much. Sometimes it's so hot that you only dance every other tip just to keep cool. It's actually quite a common thing. That's what I noticed in Europe as well when I was doing rounds. It was a 2-for-2 format, but there was a lot of socialization. But the dancers, I think Guido made this comment earlier about teaching common sense and courtesy. If you weren't going to be round dancing, you got off the floor, you socialized either out in the hall or something so that the callers could hear it. People learned about that, and then you were in on the floor. If you were going to stay in the hall, you didn't hoot and holler and everything else, but you still had lots of social activity. But it was a different time. It was a different mentality. It was, all of that other kind of stuff that goes into that. But there are a lot of square dancers that round dance mainly because it's a good way to cool off. Because if you come out of a really hot environment and you got a driving square dance, slow, gentle, evenly flowing movement is actually a better way to cool off than sitting down. Yolanda, you had your hand up.
Yeah, what we were finding too is that we have some dancers that like the square dance but can't do every tip. So this way, when we have the rounds in between, and sometimes we'll do one instead of two, depending on what the balance is in the hall. It gives the people that are a little more energetic the opportunity to dance, and then the ones that don't have as much energy can just go up and go up. They can go off the floor and come back up without it being a major issue. Yeah. And if we see that there's more energetic people, then we can have two steps that are a little more energetic, or we have a waltz when we want something slower. And then having the rounds dancers on the floor, when we start dancing again, we have an automatic beginning square set up, right? So it seems to flow fairly well. But
my biggest, and this is purely selfish, but one of the reasons why I like a single round between tips, I like the format of a pre-round dance party, because there are a lot of round dancers out there that don't get a chance to do phase 4, phase 5, phase 6. There's a lot of square dancers that dance up to phase 3 and they do the simple rounds and whatnot, and they enjoy doing it. But one round between is, for me, pure mercenary for programming, because I don't do 6 or 7 or 8 minute patters. I do a 4-minute patter, a 4-minute singing call, then there's a break. 4-minute patter, 4-minute singing call, then there's a break. And that's right up through advanced. When you've got a round in between that, you've got a 4-minute patter, a 4-minute singing call, you've got a minute to get it up, you've got the round dance, which is 4 minutes, and then you've got, and oh, look at that, 8 and 4, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's so easy to program 15-minute slots. It fits so perfectly into that slot that that there's going to be 4 tips every hour. There's going to be 4 round dances every hour. And if you've got a 2.5-hour dance, great. You've got 10 tips to book for. And it makes programming so much easier. But that's just pure selfishness on my part. That used to be easy with records. It's not so much with everybody walking around with their computers these days, because now it takes 7.5 minutes to put your computer up and get everything that, and then do your mic check and then all that. But hey, that's just life.
Well, I just picked up a Pile speaker. It's a karaoke speaker from Amazon, and it covers 10,000 square feet. It's really loud. But the thing that I like about it, it has an echo on it, and with my voice, I put just a little bit echo into it. It sounds a lot better. It makes a big difference. And it's only a 10 by 10 box, and it fits on top of your speaker stand. It's got the 1 inch and a half hole in the bottom to sit on there with, and it's wireless.
When I was down in Arizona, I was at Fort Huachuca. One of the most popular places we went there, of course,